Hello, trading is closed on September 6th, 2024. As always, we'll start with our disclaimer. We'll go over our calls and make our predictions. It's my trading plan for Monday. Monday is September 9th, 2024. Please remember my calls can be completely wrong. Any trade you make should be made at your own risk. Look for the pattern with the early high, which is this. Monday should have the early low. We said unless we gap down smartly, which we did not do, we should see higher prices, even if we didn't close higher, and we had a target of 55.3649. This is a reminder of what we said. These are the patterns coming up next week. We didn't gap down. We did trade higher. We did not hit our target 55.3649, so we'll add it to the list. We do get to cross some old targets off the list from last month. 54.3985, 54.3154. You'll remember August was a strong rally month, but it was leaving all these targets behind. The idea was that during periods of strong impulsive moves, these targets don't always print in their preferred time frame, but they do print at some time. We left a whole bunch of targets behind, but now they're printing. Since the start of the year, which has been a rally year, we have only 3 lower unfilled targets. I think 52.92.30 is pretty much a lock to print before this decline's over, even though that doesn't mean we have to go down Monday. These last two in the 48 and 4700s, they might be out of reach for this year, but on average, in the 22 plus years the system's been around, we have an average of 2 to 3 targets per year which don't print. So if we drop a bit lower, hit 52.92.30, and don't print these lower targets, and then recover it to hit new highs, and we leave these 2 behind, that would be pretty much par for the course for a typical year, and a typical year has 650 targets. Point I want to make is the more targets we leave behind, the more likely it is we're going to retrace and hit them. And we'll also say this was last Friday's high. It's a wall with gap pattern right before a holiday weekend. That's not what permanent tops are made of. These things fill. They don't always fill immediately. It doesn't prevent a steep drop first. But that's not the way permanent tops are made. At some point, I think all these things will print. During the day, MEJT had this big drop. MEJT has a buy signal described on page 120 of my book. So it doesn't say when it starts. It says it's going to be pretty strong. It doesn't say it sticks. But people who read my book were prepared that sometime you were going to have a strong rally, and that's pretty strong stuff. MEJT says this whole decline isn't for keeps. Target's 54.78.37. The buy signal in the afternoon hasn't met its minimum target. It should at least go higher than this, and that gives us a target of 54.27.52. Now, there are 2 times these targets don't print in their preferred time frame. One is at major changes in trend, and the other is during periods of strong impulsive moves. But the ones that come in periods of strong impulsive moves, it's pretty much a lock they print at some time. So I'm going to make these my calls for Monday. This one has until early Tuesday. But we have to have the realization that if the drop continues in a straight line, it might not work. It's just the price you pay for trading. Nothing works every time. but it should print at some time. This is what I'm calling the wave count. I don't think this is the end of blue B. I think we have magenta A, magenta B. I think we're in magenta C. It should stop at one of these lines, which are fib targets based on magenta A, and we haven't stopped yet. So I think we're going lower. That doesn't mean we have to go lower Monday. This is magenta B. This is the count we have so far. If this is the end of blue C, of magenta C, or at least green A of magenta C, there should be a fib relationship between C and A, and there isn't. And the one time you don't have to have it is if you have an ending diagonal triangle. And that's what this could be. Let's look at the evidence. I don't think it's fair to call this a broadening top anymore, but we did break through the low. The break wasn't sustainable according to the Marx criteria. That meant you had to return to this line at some point. We went right there and stopped. Now we had the A and the B, remember from the last chart. If this is blue C, and of some degree we have our A, we have our B, and you can count an A, B, C, with C and A having good fibs. And it's at least possible to count gold C as AB with A, B, C, D, E, and an ending diagonal triangle. If that's an ending diagonal triangle, the target is to go back to its origin. The origin's over here, and in the scheme of things, that's not too much. But that's not where the story ends. We dropped all day. This dotted line's the close. We couldn't take out this close, these lows at the close. And that means for hours, the last 4 hours or so, we couldn't do anything. As soon as the market closed, we had a collapse of over 16 handles. And that collapse was not fueled by smart traders, because if they wanted out, if the institutions wanted out, they would have gotten out here. They would not wait till liquidity dries up. This is quite the same pattern we saw last Friday, where we just couldn't get the highs we wanted to get, and then right at the end of the day, we had this wall. And whether it comes in the last few minutes or right after the close before the weekend, that's not when smart money makes its move. And smart money is compelled to take the other side of the trade when these people are selling with abandon. Now, we're in free fall here. And if we're going to continue in free fall, we can just keep on dropping. But if this means anything, if this was a false move, and if that was an ending diagonal triangle, we're going to gap up smartly, and we're going to go a lot higher than this 54, 27, 52 target. If that's the right interpretation, the people who bought down here during the collapse, the ones who bought from the dumb money, if it is dumb money, they're going to get their money back in a lot more, probably by having a very strong rally lasting all day. Let's not forget that the strongest rally in percentage terms, all of them, have come during bear markets, when shorts are forced to cover. If that's the right interpretation, which we don't know yet, we won't know until Monday, we're going to gap up smartly and rally, in a strong rally. And if we don't gap up smartly, I'm not taking the trade, because if it's wrong, it's wrong. And I don't like taking counter-trend trades. But that's a strong sentiment indicator, and we'll know before Monday's open, I would think, if it's going to work. If we keep on dropping, September 14th is Carolyn's F25. If we do keep on dropping, September 14th, plus or minus 3 days, is a place to look for a low. I'm not predicting that, and just because the date's there doesn't mean you have to keep dropping. But if we do, with that window, that's the right look. Now Monday's pattern has a really low. It doesn't tell us where we open. Typically it's a rally day with a high in the final hour. If it's weak, we should see more weakness in days to come. There are higher MEJT targets. Unless we gap down smartly, the rules call for them to print. We've had a number of failed targets since last week's high, and one of the circumstances in which targets fail to print within their preferred time frames is during periods of strong impulsive moves. They print later, but not during the move. Accordingly, a long entry requires the realization that target may not print on time. Now, despite the strong decline, we closed over multiple intraday lows, so the last few hours of trading gave the bears nothing. After regular trading hours, we promptly dropped over 16 handles. The implication is that big money was done selling, but the grey down washed wanted out at any price. If, in capital letters, if that's the right interpretation, we should gap up sharply at Monday's open, and more often than not rally all day. Be aware, counter-trend trades require a decent stop loss. I still think we have a ways to go on the downside. But if we don't gap up smartly, I don't have a good plan. I think we'll see lower prices before this decline ends. I don't have a low risk entry near Friday's close. It's way too oversold for me. Sentiment indicators are getting near the levels where I'm leery to go short, even though they haven't quite hit them yet. So we'll look for Monday's open. We keep on dropping. I don't have a good plan other than to say if we just keep dropping within a few days of Saturday, there could be a low. Doesn't mean there has to be, but that's where I look for it. But I don't think that's the most likely thing. We won't know until Monday's open. But if we gap up smartly, we have a lot of higher targets, and we could have a very strong rally if we gap up smartly and if that's the right interpretation. And that's today's call.